I'm sure you're about to say, what a boring topic, this is completely unnecessary, and your hand is already reaching for the mouse to turn off the video. Don't do that, because this is a topic no one has ever talked about and it's absolutely not obvious. But precisely because of this, almost all, or even absolutely all, real estate buyers are guaranteed to run into problems. I'm talking about property maintenance, and in this video I'll tell you about the main points. I'll talk about the main pitfalls of this issue, so be sure to watch the video until the end. At the end, I'll tell you about the most unsolvable situation in this matter. But I'll also explain how you can successfully resolve it. We've released a video review of the best resort complex in Northern Cyprus. There's nothing better than it in Northern Cyprus. There has never been anything like it. There isn't now. And it's highly unlikely that anything similar will appear here. If you haven't watched it yet, the link is in the description. Be sure to check it out. But in the comments under that video, as I understand it, the residents of this complex, the property owners, wrote complaints about the management company. They wrote that the cost is high and that if they don't pay for maintenance, the management company threatens to cut off their water supply. We have no connection to the management company, nor to this complex, nor to the residents of this complex. We only vacation there, and when a resale property occasionally becomes available, we offer it to our clients who purchase it with great gratitude and are then happy. By the way, in those comments, no one said that the complex itself was bad. The complaints were only about the maintenance. We don't know who is right or wrong. But when I discussed this issue with property owners in other complexes, in Escale, in SNTP, in Famagusta, in Kyrenia, and in Uzelyurt, every single one of them with whom we talked about this said they were absolutely dissatisfied with the management companies in their complexes. That's exactly what ruins their lives. I'll tell you more. In a resort complex in the Gazi area, in Uzelyurt, the residents did something absolutely unprecedented, truly unheard of. If you've ever run a business, or if you have your own family and have tried to resolve an issue among even just 3 or 4 people, you understand that gathering all the residents together and filing a class action lawsuit against the management company is an almost impossible task. But the residents did it. That's how fed up they were with the so-called management company in Gazievra. They filed a class action lawsuit, a collective lawsuit, and took it to court. The residents are not satisfied with the quality of service. Residents are never satisfied. The cost of service and the balance between price and quality of service. And the service might cost £10 a month, or it might cost £300 a month. Both are absolutely real numbers. And the residents refuse to pay, whether it's 10, 20, 100, or 300, absolutely any amount. The question is there anything you can do about this and still live happily? I believe it's impossible. I'll explain in detail why in a moment. Write in the comments how much you would be willing to pay for the maintenance of your property and what should be included in that service, so that you wouldn't mind paying for it. We ourselves had our own management company. It operated for 15 years, and with losses and great disappointment, we had to close it. We didn't originally start it as a business. At that time, there was an economic crisis, and I foresaw it. I knew there would be the 2008 crisis, and I had already lived through the crisis of 1998. And I wanted to have a safety cushion both for my family and for my business to get through the 2008 crisis. And we managed to get through it successfully. At that time, we moved out of the villa and bought an apartment. In this way, we created a safety cushion for both the family and the business. In the same complex where our family bought an apartment, we sold quite a few apartments to our clients, and we wanted to make life in this complex very comfortable. We wanted it to be beautiful there, for everything to work. A shared swimming pool, landscaped areas, so that it would be comfortable to live there for my family and for all the residents of the complex. I thought, well, what do we have here? Taking care of cleaning the entrances, cleaning the common areas, the parking lots, pool maintenance, that all of this would be quite inexpensive. So now we'll do all this for a very small amount, just at cost. The residents will be happy, they'll be glad to pay these small maintenance fees, and everything will be great for everyone. This turned out to be a huge mistake on every level. First of all, as it turned out, everything I just mentioned costs much, much more, several times more in fact. Just for the pool, we were using up to 60 tons of water per week during the season. It was a large swimming pool, and the water was very expensive. At that time, there was no centralized water supply yet. We had to buy water from water trucks that brought it from wells. It was quite an expensive pleasure. The cost was high. Electricity supply, payments to the gardeners, the company that maintained the pool, plus pool chemicals, plus various repair works, just for replacing the motors alone. For these pools, we paid over 3,000 British pounds when they were flooded with rainwater at a certain point. So the initial cost turned out to be much higher. Let me answer the first part. Yes, you're right, because we had never done this before. And we didn't want to do it as a business. We didn't want to make money. We just wanted to create a comfortable life for our buyers. And secondly, no, that's not the reason. The electricity rates are the same and the pool maintenance fees are also the same, exactly the same. So no, we wouldn't have saved anything. Salaries are the same too. Of course, we had no experience, but we really couldn't have saved much. And the next big problem with this issue is just an illustration. We held the first meeting of the residents. We said, here are the areas we have. Tell us how you would like us to improve them. And that's when it all started. First, some people said, lay down a lawn. Second, others said, we'll park our cars here. Third, some said, no, you should put up a fence so cars can't get in here. Those are the ones who don't have cars. Are you all following? With gravel, we don't need a lawn. Fourth, some say, okay, let's put up a fence, install benches, plant roses and some trees here and make it a park. Those who have children say, this spot will be a playground and cars are not allowed on the premises. We completely forbid it. And all of this is about the same little patch of land. Then everyone says, if you don't do exactly what I want, we won't pay a single penny for it. That was our first mistake. Due to inexperience, that was our first real disappointment. Then what's worse, the law, unfortunately, doesn't regulate this issue in any way. Or rather, there are some regulations, but they don't require anything from either the residents or the management company. And the monthly payments are so small, is it really worth going to court over such minor amounts? 20 to 30 British pounds a month. Dealing with someone just because they don't pay, it's simply not worth it. It would seem that the residents stopped paying for property maintenance. That was the next problem. And just as an example, I have a very good acquaintance here, a Russian speaker in Northern Cyprus. And about 15 years ago, we were talking. She bought an apartment in a very nice, beautiful, cozy, prestigious complex with a large communal pool, some infrastructure, and sea views. They even have a little bridge over the pool. Then she was bragging to me about how comfortable her life is here. But when she finished bragging, she immediately smiled and said to me, and she said, well, of course, I don't pay anything for maintenance, simply because no one can do anything to her about it. And they can't force her in any way. And for those 40 pounds a month, no one is going to argue with her. Yes, in our complex, the one where we started this business, which we didn't start to make money, but to do something good for people. Yes, they all ended up quarreling with each other. I told them, but I didn't talk about it too much. I thought people would understand anyway, that if we stopped providing service now and just left, and we did leave. And that's what ended up happening. So if we leave now, then in a month, because of unpaid electricity bills, your electricity will be cut off. If your electricity is cut off, then things stop working. Obviously, there will be no more lighting in the hallways. Okay? The irrigation system stops working. The irrigation stops working, some of your plants will dry out and turn into dead wood, basically just trash. And the pool motors will also stop working. The water will stop being filtered. In the summer, literally in a week, the water will already be black, just as dirty as this desk. The debts actually were small. I'm saying if it costs 30 pounds a month, that's 360 pounds a year. As a result, we exited this whole business with a loss, well, in total about 300,000 British pounds sterling, but of that, the debts for maintenance made up maybe 40% of that amount, maybe around 120,000, for example. The rest were other expenses. But thanks to the fact that the government introduced amendments to the law, now everyone urgently needs to transfer the certificate of ownership in their own name, so the residents are gradually coming in, and those debts that they had accumulated since 2008, they are slowly paying off, and we, already over the past few months, more than 30,000 pounds of these debts have been repaid. As an entrepreneur, I understand everything. I'm not an idiot. I understand that I should have hired an employee who would handle the collection of accounts receivable, that it was necessary to hire an employee who would be responsible for quality control, who would go around the apartments, talk to the residents, conduct surveys. But that means 2 more salaries, 2 more cars, plus gas, mobile communication, internet, an office workspace, social security, pension fund, and taxes for these employees. And all of that would have additionally fallen on In the end, these expenses would have been paid by the residents of these apartments. That's why we didn't do it. To run this business, you have to be very tough, even ruthless and merciless. Really, to cut off people's water the very first day they're late on a payment, some people do that. It's just that I'm not like that, and I didn't need this as a business. And you might ask me, okay, we struggled with this complex for a year or two, we left with losses, so why did we keep going for another 13 years? It's very simple. We're developers, we're builders, we've constructed a certain number of another complex, more than 200 real estate properties here in Northern Cyprus. Naturally, every single time we truly tried to build the very best there is, an absolute masterpiece. In this country, at least. Not in the world. We really did build the best that was available on the market. We were always one step ahead of any other construction companies. We never skimped on the finishing, we never spared money on construction. Even though we sold everything at the pencil stage and at the very beginning of the project's construction, naturally, I really wanted these great projects to be beautiful. Here are bougainvilleas, here is a lawn, here are benches, here are lanterns, so that the residents would be happy. That's why we took care of all that. But when 10% of the residents stop paying for their property, for maintenance, well, it doesn't seem like a big problem. So what? It's just 10% less than the expected income. But when your neighbor doesn't pay, you start thinking, why should I be the odd one out? To pay, then another 10% and another 10%, and then we no longer have enough budget to maintain everything properly, and then our staff, the maintenance company employees, see that their work isn't appreciated, that the residents don't want to pay and don't even greet them and just throw trash onto the common areas. And then our staff, whether intentionally or not, consciously or unconsciously, also start to provide worse service, seeing this so-called gratitude. As a result, the quality declines. And then the other residents say, why should we pay if the quality is so poor? And they're right about that too. That's why, until June 2023, we serviced all the complexes. Then we said, no, we don't want to do this anymore. Especially since everything was financed only out of our own pockets, we said, no, we're leaving this, that's the right thing to do. Maybe I've painted a rather grim picture, but I'll tell you what conclusion we came to and what we did to prevent these problems from happening. So our first complexes we built with swimming pools, with playgrounds for children, but all the subsequent complexes we built without large-scale infrastructure. We built with the idea that if at some point our residents can't come to an agreement with us, can't come to an agreement among themselves or with any other management company, at the very least, they would still be able to live comfortably. In other words, we stopped building swimming pools, we stopped building playgrounds. That is, things that require constant repairs, ongoing investment, and continuous attention. And indeed, when we left those complexes that didn't have this infrastructure, people continued to live there perfectly well. That is, everyone can clean their own entrance. By the way, we still continue to pay for it just like that. We pay the monthly bills for the entrances, otherwise there wouldn't even be electricity in the entrances and the complexes would be dark. Simply as a gift. Even though they don't even know about it. They probably think that Allah provides electricity to their entrances and complexes. But nevertheless, we are the ones paying for it. Anyone who wants to live in cleanliness can clean their own landing, those few square meters, and everyone can sweep their own parking spot. At the very least, this decision turned out to be justified, and truly the complexes we built, I go there without any regrets. I go there without any negative thoughts. They really are beautiful, green, and wonderful. Moreover, we built the buildings themselves to the highest standard. Their appearance always looks good. For the most part, they don't even need to be repainted. We designed the exterior so that it would last a long time, look good, and be prestigious. And in this way, even without extensive infrastructure, everything looks good. But if you want a resort complex with infrastructure, then you have to understand that you will have to pay for that. There is no other option. Sometimes people criticize Northern Cyprus saying, you have bad internet here. But if you want good internet, buy a more expensive package. The only problem is that you don't want to pay for it. Not that something is lacking in Northern Cyprus. We have plenty of internet here. We just pay for it and there are no problems with that. In large resort complexes with a huge amount of infrastructure, where there are swimming pools, gyms, indoor pools, steam rooms, saunas, jacuzzis, kindergartens, children's playgrounds, and much, much more, the developers took a different approach. When these complexes were being built, they constructed several large water reservoirs, each holding, for example, 200 tons. And these developers purchase water from the municipality. At a lower price, store it in these reservoirs, and then sell this water to their residents at a higher price. Why do they bother with all this? It's so that the management company has a lever of pressure on the residents if they stop paying for maintenance, because all the aforementioned infrastructure really does cost quite a lot of money to maintain. And we're not talking about hundreds or even thousands of pounds. We're talking about tens of thousands of pounds every month. And this money absolutely has to be sourced from somewhere. So if the residents don't pay, the management company has a lever of pressure and they immediately cut off the water supply. We can't live without water. Some people can. I don't know how they manage it. Maybe they steal buckets of water from the pool at night. But the rest, about 99% of people, can't live without water, so they pay. And that's how these complexes are kept in excellent condition. And if what happens then? No, the residents will never be satisfied. I'm not saying this as a reproach. Let me give you two examples. Just now I was giving bad examples. Now I'll give two good examples. In Northern Cyprus, there was and still is a resort complex that's simply the best of the best. It's not quite as good as the one I mentioned at the beginning of the video where we started this conversation. And as of today, no one else even knows about it anymore. There was a complex that was built just 5 meters from the water, right on the beach. An Italian design bureau did the design. It was almost 20 years ago. And even though 20 years have passed, nothing being built today, either in Northern or Southern Cyprus, has reached that level yet. Just so you understand correctly, at that time, you could buy a villa in Northern Cyprus for anywhere from 65 to a maximum of 130,000 British pounds sterling. And the apartments in the complex I'm talking about now, even back then, were already selling for 300,000 pounds. They cost more than real estate properties in Southern Cyprus. Almost all of them were already sold, almost all of them. I really wanted to buy an apartment there for 300,000. They operated normally for 2 or 3 seasons, but then due to all the problems mentioned above, things gradually got worse and worse. Thank God we didn't manage to buy an apartment there. In the end, the complex is still around, but no one knows about it anymore. It's not a benchmark, it's not being sold, it's not being offered, and no one goes there anymore. Precisely because everything went downhill there. Here's the second example as well. In Northern Cyprus, here in Kyrenia, there is, in my opinion, the best construction company. It's not ours. To me, they're like Tesla and Apple, honestly, but only in their own segment of construction in Northern Cyprus. And what do you think? In their very first project here, right here in Kyrenia, they messed up too. If you know anything about construction, they finish all their projects ahead of schedule. But if you understand what I'm talking about, you'll realize they're basically mega supermen. They issue the certificate of ownership even before the legal amendments are adopted. They were issuing them even before they started building. So they're basically mega supermen. This is the highest level. And yet they couldn't handle the maintenance of their first complex. I don't know exactly what they couldn't handle, but in fact they left. So they didn't come to an agreement about something. Apparently it was also with the residents. And they left and everything went downhill there. And our buyers, those who bought there with our help, we sold all the apartments for this reason. People just left and bought other properties for themselves. That was the solution. You need to honestly answer this question for yourself. What do you want and what are you willing to pay for? If you don't want to pay for maintenance, then buy a property in a complex without shared infrastructure where you'll be autonomous. You'll have your own sewage system, your own electricity supply, your own water supply. If you want, you can build your own swimming pool and use it. If you want, you can turn it into a swamp. If you want, you can take care of your own garden. If you don't want to, you can let it get overgrown with dirt up to your ears if that's how you like to live. But you'll be independent from the shared infrastructure. There simply won't be any. If you can't afford a villa, buy an apartment in one of the complexes, for example, the ones we've built without this infrastructure. There, the ownership certificates are ready. There are no management companies, but everything is very nice, and the residents don't pay a single penny for it because we didn't build any infrastructure there. And the rule, according to the new law 82/20, is also observed everywhere. Please contact us using the details in the description of this video for a free consultation. We will offer you such options. You'll be happy and you won't have any problems. But if you want high-level infrastructure, if you want to come as if to a resort, to a 5-star hotel and enjoy life there so that you, your spouse, your children, and your parents, all of you feel great. And you understand that for this, you need a wide range of services that will be available at this resort. Then you have to be prepared to pay for it. But let me share a life hack with you. We don't actually know who will be in charge after the complex where you bought is built. That's why if you've chosen something, be sure to ask the developer what they have built and sold before. Go visit those properties, and if you see that everything there has turned into a dump, then there's a 90% guarantee that the new complex will be the same. You shouldn't buy there. If you see that everything is beautiful there and well maintained, even if the residents complain, but everything looks good and it suits you, then there's a high chance the new complex will be the same. Do you live? How much do you pay for maintenance? I live in a villa and we pay a lot for maintenance. So when people mention prices like 100, 200 or 300 pounds and say that's expensive, I find it funny because I do not pay 300 or even 500 pounds. I pay several times more. But that was my choice. We have a large plot of land there, landscaped. We have gardeners, we have a housekeeper, we have a private swimming pool, a jacuzzi, both outdoor and indoor, and a sauna. In other words, we have quite a lot of things, and all of that costs money. So comfort was very important to me, for myself and for my family. And I understood that if I lived in the European Union, for example, or in the United Kingdom, I would be paying for this level of comfort probably $10,000 to $15,000 a month. Here in Northern Cyprus, it's not cheap, but it's several times less expensive, maybe even 10 times cheaper. That's why, by the way, my advice to you is, if you want a very high standard of living, but you're not ready to pay tens of millions for a villa and tens of thousands for monthly maintenance, then please come to Northern Cyprus. Here you'll enjoy a very high standard of living, and while it won't be for pennies, it will be several times cheaper than what you would spend, for example, in Southern Europe. And our staff will help you find a home where you'll be guaranteed to like everything, both inside and out. There's a link in the description to a form for a free consultation. Feel free to reach out. We'll reveal all the secrets to you.